Right, good morning and good afternoon. Welcome to another episode of Before Coffee. It is Thursday, so we're gonna just cover whatever we want again. And I think we're also covering somebody from the Wheel of Squeal here today. We're just not gonna spin it anymore because we're on the top 3 losers of the Squeal of Fortune, and we're gonna find out what they squealed on.
Or didn't squeal on.
What they did. Alright. Today on Before Coffee. Scotland adopts a new feminist foreign policy. Sweden shows how difficult it can be in reality.
As Americans complain about 3% inflation, the UK is celebrating 4.6% inflation.
Wind of change. Germany gets serious about plans to make military fit for war.
And we retire, as we said earlier, we retired a Squeal of Fortune as one of the bottom 3 is probably getting thrown back in jail. And Giuliani's buddies are arrested in Ukraine.
Weiwei London exhibition effectively cancelled over Israel's social media post.
Stories and more on today, which is November 16th, 2023. The Great American Smokeout of 2023 on Before Coffee.
Okay, let's cover our first news story, which I've accidentally... why does this website do this, where you can just like keep going through all of the columns on the website? I've got like 15. Like, you can basically like TikTok wheel through all of their articles. So I guess they're trying to make people addicted to reading the news. I don't know. But anyways, our first news story is about Scotland trying to be feminist and Sweden saying it's not as easy as you think. This is from Laurel Locke on Euronews. Scotland will be the first part of the UK to adopt a feminist approach to international relations. But is it merely symbolic or transformative? Scotland has become the latest country to adopt a feminist approach to its foreign policy. International Development Minister Christina McLevy made the announcement at a forum on women's leadership in Iceland on Monday. And although Scotland has a limited foreign policy scope under its devolved agreement with London, McLevy says it is important to refocus efforts. We want a feminist policy that questions colonialism, that's actively anti-racist, that targets patriarchy in some ways that capitalist, imperial, male-dominated power structures, McLevy told Euronews. One of the things we want to prioritize is peace and how peace can protect the rights of women and marginalized groups, she added. Yeah, that's kind of true. You can't get away with a lot of crimes if nothing's happening, because I'm bored. Can we go find a crime? Oh yeah, that person did a crime. Whereas if in the middle of the war, there's crimes all over the place that are going on, and nobody has time because they're fighting a war. Scotland becomes the first part of the UK to take a feminist approach to international relations, helping women and girls in less developed countries. Several other European countries have adopted similar policies over the last decade, with variable long-term follow-through and mixed results, leading many to question whether adopting such policies is merely symbolic or has real transformative potential. So, can a feminist foreign policy be a game changer? Is this wokeness gone mad? What was born as a way to challenge the status quo of international politics is seen by some as a necessary reframing of a staid foreign policy narrative, which, while others are skeptical. In the absence of a concrete definition, each state has its own interpretation of what exactly a feminist foreign policy is. We love women. I love women. I care about one woman, my wife. See, I'm a feminist. The term came to use first in Sweden in the midst of Russia's annexation of Crimea and an incursion into Swedish territorial waters. In this context, the international media joked, could Vladimir Putin be intimidated by Swedish feminism? As the feminist movement has gained momentum, and since Sweden took the first step, other countries have followed suit, including Canada, Mexico, France, Luxembourg, Spain, Libya, Germany, the Netherlands, and Chile. There's been a lot of development work on what works and what doesn't, and how other countries have approached this. We've learned a lot from countries like Spain about how to implement this policy, says McKelvey. When we announced it, we had the usual, "This is wokeness gone mad," or "What does it mean? It's all about being fluffy and cuddly." Patriarchal organizations will laugh. But we know we are committed to making a difference for people around the world, she added. Scotland is still debating the total amount of money it will allocate to the policy, but the minister has already said she plans to spend every penny in the budget. It's hard to put a price tag on what we do, McKelvey added. When Sweden's then Foreign Minister Margot Wallström announced in 2014 that our country would be the first in the world to adopt a feminist foreign policy, the proposal was greeted with a small amount of amusement. The idea was to make gender equality a priority in Stockholm's relations with other countries. Although the Nordic nation has recently officially scrapped the policy, other foreign ministers both inside and outside the European Union took notice at the time and embarked on their own journeys to be more feminist in their foreign policy stances. The country that pioneered feminist foreign policy was also the first to repeal it. After 8 years in force, a conservative government came to power in last year's election, putting an end to feminist diplomacy. Sweden's foreign minister, the conservative Tobias Billström, argued that it had become a counterproductive label. Their reasoning was that such a label of feminist foreign policy obscures the policy behind it, and that they were still somehow focused on prioritizing gender equality, but they felt that feminist label was just an empty label. Jennifer Bergman from the Swedish Institute of International Affairs told Euronews. So they were doing foreign policy that wasn't actually feminist at all, but they put a label on it to be like, hey, look, we're great. While organizations such as Human Rights Watch criticized the country's moves, there was much internal disagreement over the policy's performance. The most notorious incident involved a diplomatic dispute between the former FM Wallström and Saudi Arabia, after she was sharply critical of repression in the Middle Eastern theocracy. Speaking in Swedish Parliament, she described the 1,000 lashes to which the blogger and human rights activist Raif Badawi had been sentenced to as a medieval punishment. Saudi Arabia reacted fiercely to the first diplomatic strike, blocking a speech Wallström was due to give to Arab leaders on women's rights and temporarily severing ties with Sweden. The row did not stop there. In retaliation, Sweden stopped selling arms to Saudi Arabia, which was its main customer, and canceled all multi-billion dollar deal that would be implemented in the future. I mean, that sounds like a great plan for me. Stop selling people weapons. Yeah. Can't have a war if nobody has weapons. That's what I say. You just throw rocks at each other from across a field.
Somewhere else. They just go to another store and it's all.
Although the incident was never officially cited as the reason for the country's reversal of its feminist foreign policy stance, the Swedish arms industry previously had a turnover of more than 1.2 billion sales in Arab countries. Even though Sweden has a long tradition in politics of promoting gender equality, the parties on the left that have implemented these policies have been more in favor of using the feminist label, whereas the parties on the right tend to be more against it, says analyst Jennifer Bergman. Another challenge for Swedish feminist politics was the balance between national interest and the lofty ambition of its feminist diplomacy, according to Ines Arco Eshirashi, a researcher at the Barcelona Center for Internal Affairs. Sweden tightens its 2016 in its asylum and border control policies, making family reunification almost impossible. That's not very feminist. While the Ministry of Foreign Affairs claimed that in its action plan that the feminist diplomacy aimed to protect and empower women in other countries, including refugees and immigrants, I guess in a way it does empower them. No man's here to save you. You better go save yourself. Yeah. Bad bitch energy or something. The tightening of migration policies left thousands of women in refugee camps or living in war-torn countries. So, there you go. Will Scotland prevail where Sweden failed? We'll find out, because also Scotland isn't one big country. It's just a small country, part of a bigger country. So, as I said earlier in the article, they don't do a lot of foreign policy as London does, but they still have some. Your story.
And I don't think Scotland has its own weapons industry either. No, they
have oil.
Pipes.
That's what they have.
What?
Scotland has oil.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
We have an army of kilt wearers. So that's enough to scare people. Especially the people that are afraid of transgenders. The men in dresses. In economic news, we have combined two stories which came out at the same time. U.S. producer prices. It's not the consumer prices, but the producer prices unexpectedly fall in October. This is according to Reuters and person's name on it. Nope, Reuters. U.S. producer prices fell by the most in 3.5 years in October amid a sharp drop in the cost of gasoline. I noticed that the price of gas is way down. It's under $3 a gallon. The latest indication of subsiding inflation pressures. The producer price index for final demand declined 0.5% last month, the largest decrease since April 2020. The Labor Department's Bureau of Labor Statistics said on Wednesday. Data for September was revised lower to show the PPI increasing 0.4% instead of 0.5% as previously reported. Economists were polled, and we know how painful that could be, by Reuters had forecasted the PPI edging up 1% let's do this again. Economists polled by Reuters have forecast the PPI edging up 0.1% in the 12 months through October. PPI increased 1.3 after rising 2.2 in September. The report followed data on Tuesday showing consumer prices unchanged in October. Cooling inflation, together with slowing job and wage growth, reinforced expectations that the U.S. Central Bank's fastest monetary policy tightening campaign since 1980s was over. Finally, we hope. Stop raising interest rates. Financial markets are anticipating a rate cut next May. According to CMA Group's FedWatch tool, since March 2022, the FedEx hiked its policy rate by 525 basis points to the current 5.25 to 5.5% range. Goods prices dropped 1.4 in October with a 15.3 plunge in gasoline prices, accounting for more than 80% of the decline. Goods prices rose 0.8% in September. Food prices fell 0.2%. Excluding the volatile energy and energy components, goods prices edged up 0.1% last month. In so-called core goods, prices rose 0.2% for September. Prices for light motor trucks fell. New model year passenger cars and light motor trucks were introduced into the data with October release in line with the normal practice. Cost of services was unchanged after increasing 0.2%. Airline fares rose 3.1%. There were also increases in the cost of inpatient and outpatient care, which is ridiculous, as well as the transportation of freight by road, but portfolio management fees and prices for motel and hotel rooms fell. Well, that's a lot of minutia in the middle. But that's the stuff that inflation statistics are made of, and the producer price index drives the consumer price index. And we're going to talk about the consumer price index in another country, which is the UK. This is according to the New York Times. UK inflation slows to 4.6%, lowest in 2 years. This is from Eshy Nelson. Inflation in Britain slowed last month, bringing the rate to its lowest level in 2 years in a welcome easing of stubborn price pressure. Consumer prices rose 4.6% in October from a year earlier, the Office of National Statistics said on Wednesday, down from 6.7% in the previous month. Last year, Russia's invasion of Ukraine made wholesale energy prices soar, but price caps on bills on Britain meant that households felt these increases with a lag. The same has been true as wholesale prices have dropped this year. In October, the inflation rate was pulled down by a drop in household energy costs. Was the cap set every 3 months by the energy regulator was lowered. The average household bill was set to £1,834 or $2,293 per year, 7% lower than the year before. A year ago, overall inflation hit a peak of more than 11% on a jump in household energy costs even after the government intervened to subsidize those payments. Food inflation, which had taken over from energy as a main driver of inflation in recent months, also slowed in October. Food prices rose 10.1%, the slowest pace since June 2022. That's what I said. Food prices rose 10%, the slowest pace in 2022. And we in the United States complain about our slow, plodding, almost unnoticeable inflation compared to other countries. As policymakers draw comfort from slowing headline inflation, they're carefully watching other measures of domestic price pressures to see how persistent inflation might be. They're falling more slowly. For example, officials look at core inflation, a measure that excludes food and energy prices because they can be volatile and heavily influenced by international and financial markets. Last month, core inflation inched to 5.7%, down slightly from 6.1% in September. At the start of the year, when inflation exceeded 10%, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak pledged that to have inflation in Britain by the have inflation in Britain by the end of the year. After Wednesday's data release, he claimed victory on the promise. Here's a guy claiming victory. What did he do? What did he do to make this victory promise? He can't tell you, but he's claiming victory. Anyway, your story.
We've won, I swear. We've won.
We won by waiting it out. Yeah.
So a bunch of people starved to death, but hey, everyone who survived deserved it. It's a world, what is it called? Man eat man world out there. There you go. Okay. Speaking of changes that come a bit too late or maybe too early, I have no idea. But Germany is getting serious about going back to being a active military. This is from Andrew Naughty on Euronews. The return of full-scale armed conflict to Europe has Germany dramatically reframing its security policy. With Russia and Ukraine still locked in combat after nearly 2 years and a major Israel-Palestinian conflict underway, I would not call that a us versus them conflict. I would call it a one-sided conflict. That's my stance on the Israel-Palestine thing. It's Israel versus a bunch of people who are just like, what the hell, man? I just wanted to live. My bad. Genocidal conflict. The European Union and NATO are feeling their way into a chaotic new world security order. And Europe's largest economy is shaking up decades-old ideas on what military is actually for. When the Ukraine war first beckoned, Germany was initially wary of offering Kyiv direct military supplies, but shortly after Russia invaded, Chancellor Olaf Scholz recast Germany's moral obligations to help resist Russian aggression in dramatic terms. In his so-called Zeitenwende, or turning point, address to Bundestag, or that's probably Bundestag because it's German, has described Putin's war in Ukraine as one that risked a return to the dark days of Europe before the 1940s, alluding to Germany's history as he pressed parliamentarians to support the shipment of weapons and supplies to a non-EU, non-NATO ally. Many of us remember our parents' or grandparents' tales of war, and for younger people, it is almost inconceivable. War in Europe. Many of them are giving voice to their horror. The issues at heart of this is whether power is allowed to prevail over the law, whether we permit Putin to turn back the clock to the 19th century and the age of the great powers, or whether we have in us to keep warmongers like Putin in check. That requires strength of our own. The speech was a major turning point not just the Ukraine conflict, but in the German government's way of discussing military strategy, which given the country's history until 1945, has long been a difficult subject. Until recent years, contributing to world security via NATO rather than unilaterally increasing German military power has proven sufficient to avoid reopening awkward discussions about what a strong Germany might mean for Europe. Since the Zeitenwende speech, Germany's contributions to Ukraine have been at times halting, with complaints from Kyiv and other European partners that Berlin is not moving fast enough to deliver on its promises. But with Ukrainians struggling to push Russia back on their crucial southeastern front, Germany is trying to push things further, and Scholz's defense minister Boris Pistorius is now talking about Germany's defense posture in terms unlike anything heard since the country was reunified in 1990. Writing in newspaper Tagesspiegel recently, Pistorius called for the fundamental changes to the German army, the Bundeswehr, which he said needs major structural reform to be effective and fit for war in the future. The phrasing is starkly different from the relatively tentative way German governments have addressed military strength in recent decades. And in his final paragraph, Pistorius wrote in an even more strongly unilateral term that will have made many thinkers and policymakers in Berlin uncomfortable. We need a change of mentality, not in the Bundeswehr, but also in politics and society, he declared. At stake is the security of our country, and thus the foundation for social coexistence, progress, and economic growth. As a state and a society, we need to be able to defend ourselves and be resilient so that we can continue to live in peace, freedom, and security in the future. According to German security policy expert Mina Alander, based at the Finnish Institute of International Affairs, Pistorius' words have been met with a degree of astonishment, as well as a pushback from the left of his party, the Social Democrats. Many of his party colleagues share a deep aversion to the normalization of war, and are alarmed that Pistorius is ready to talk in these terms. However, she also told Euronews that the structural problems facing the Bundeswehr are simply too serious for the government to avoid giving the promises it's already made. There was a sense of waning impetus after the summer, but Germany is under a lot of pressure to deliver on the pledge to send a 4,000-strong brigade to Lithuania, as Pistorius promised, she said. Currently, the Bundeswehr isn't able to set it up and is likely to take some years until the brigade is fully manned and equipped. That is not great for a country the size of Germany. It has become also a question of prestige to an extent. In addition, Germany has made really lofty promises of troop contingents, 30,000 troops, 85 ships and jets. So all of this is a huge challenge considering the condition of the Bundeswehr at the moment. Simply throwing money into the Bundeswehr won't help if the structural issues, especially inefficiency, aren't addressed. This is of course not just about Germany itself. Looming over the strategy shift is the NATO spending requirement, that is, the obligation on all treaty members to spend at least 2% of their annual GDP on defense. Germany has historically not fulfilled this requirement, and Scholz alluded to putting that right in the turning point speech. But it has yet to appear in a long-term budget. Scholz has now reaffirmed this promise, saying Germany will start meeting the target in the 20s and 30s, a pledge that might help forestall a major risk to the alliance's legitimacy. The shortfall in spending by European NATO members was a fixation for Donald Trump, who, as a US president, frequently complained that Germany specifically was freeloading on American defense spending and even threatened to pull out thousands of troops stationed there. To be fair, we were at peace times in 2016 or whenever he was talking about this, I guess 2020. Why would Germany need a huge defense budget for? They didn't need anything to defend against. But I guess this article is also arguing that if you're not ready to defend yourself, you might get attacked and invaded before you can do anything to fix that problem. So that's why Germany is trying to increase their defense budget so that they can actually be ready. Because I guess they think that Russia might get impatient and just attack everyone. I don't know. They make a fortune off the troops. I don't know if they're selling troops to make money. This is Donald Trump's words. He told Fox News in 2020, they build city around our troops. We'll let ourselves get rich first. I guess they're arguing that American troops living in Germany are paying taxes to Germany, so they're making bank off of Americans who are like tourism, right? I guess that's what he's arguing. It's like American soldier tourism, and Germany's making all the money.
like any democracy, it is a democracy. They have an internal debate about what to do, and I just told what to do from above, and that's what's messy about it.
Yeah. With Trump running for another term and polling well against Joe Biden, which, let's not get angry about polls real quick, means nothing.
Polls are useless.
Former advisors turned critics have warned that should he be reelected, he might well and try and make good on his previous threats to pull the US out of NATO altogether. And where Germany, the alliance's second largest economy is still not on track to meet its obligation once Trump was re-inaugurated in January 2025, a NATO withdrawal would be easier for him to sell to the increasingly isolationist Republican Party. The US leaving NATO would send Europe's security order into disarray at an incredibly dangerous moment. And as Alander told Euronews, it's not just the conflict in Ukraine that brought the gravity of the situation home. I think that the Hamas attack and Gaza war have had an enormous impact on German society and politics. The shift to right-wing rhetoric was instant, especially on migration, she said. But there's also a real point to be made that there will probably have to be ready for more conflicts potentially erupting in Europe's vicinity, as the old security order has unraveled. I don't know what she's talking about there, but I think everyone is getting a bit antsy, kind of that quiet before the storm, perhaps. There has been a lot of trending on social media for World War III, like there always is whenever there's a conflict in Iran or conflict with China or North Korea. All the time, social media goes, World War III is coming! I think in 2020, people were getting ready for World War III. That was the big meme back then. So, as long as you don't start the war, you can't start a world war, okay? Don't anticipate a war and then start one. That's the warning I'm giving out to anybody who's listening.
Right.
Your story.
I think their contingency is if dumbass big orange blob gets elected next year, he's gonna drop out of NATO. So Germany might have to fucking just, hey, we
pull all the weight, yeah.
We need an army because we're the biggest economy in this whole deal right now. Okay. In Squeal of Fortune news, we mentioned this earlier, we were down to the bottom 3, and so we got news on some of the people that have already been spun, and one of the people that is still on it. This is from the NBC News. Charlie Guile, Daira Gregorian, Blaine Alexander, and Zoe Richards. So 4 people in one story. An attorney for one of the former President Trump's co-defendants in Fulton County District Attorney's 2020 election interference case admitted at a hearing Wednesday that he had shared the witness proffer videos of key figures. I was speculating yesterday that it was Giuliani. It wasn't. It was Jonathan Miller, an attorney for Misty Hampton, made the confession during an emergency hearing for a protective order that was prompted by the publication of parts of the video statements of Sidney Powell, Jen Ellis, Kenneth Chesebro, Scott Hall, by ABC News and the Washington Post. The judge said he would issue a protective order barring the disclosure of certain discovery information by Thursday morning. Powell, Ellis, Chesebro, and Hall were among the original 18 defendants on the Squeal of Fortune charged, along with former President defendant Jay Trump in a racketeering case in August. All 4 have pleaded guilty to the related charges. Proffer videos were made pursuant to their plea agreements, which required that they provide true and accurate information to prosecutors. Video showed Ellis recounting a conversation with Trump advisor Dan Scavino, in which he told her that Trump would not leave the White House regardless of the election results, and Powell testifying that Trump was repeatedly told by others that he lost the election. Being transparent with the court and to make sure that nobody else gets blamed for what happened, and so that I can go to sleep well tonight, Judge, I did release those videos to one outlet. Miller told Fulton County Superior Court Judge Scott McAfee during the hearing. In all candor to the court, I need the court to know that, he said. Asked why he'd done so, he noted that while the 4 guilty pleas were public, to hide those proffers that show the underlying things that went into those pleas, it misleads the public of what's going on. He said the 2 defendants were directly related to my client, and I don't believe that either one of those hurt my client. If anything, I believe that it helped my client. The public needs to know that. The public has a right to know, he added. Noted to not name the defendants related to his client, but Hampton is charged with a scheme to access voting machines in Coffee County, which Powell and Hall were charged with as well. Also in this case, in a separate filing Wednesday, the DA's office urged the court to revoke the bond of defendant Harrison Floyd, the former head of Black Voices for Trump, arguing that he had violated conditions of release. The DA's office said that Floyd had publicly tweeted multiple times this month in an effort to intimidate co-defendants and witnesses to communicate directly and indirectly with co-defendants and witnesses and to otherwise obstruct the administration of justice. The same shit Trump's doing. Wait a minute here. Why isn't Trump being revoked his bail? Yo, come on. Why you're locking up a black guy? Really? But you won't lock up Trump. Wow, this is just mind-boggling how Trump gets away with shit ordinary citizens can't. This is infuriating, actually. Attorney for Floyd did not immediately respond to the request for comment. Okay, and other co-conspirator news. These are co-conspirators on Trump's impeachment. Remember Trump's first impeachment, where he was impeached in Ukraine? Way back in the midst of times. Back before the 20s started. Ukraine, this is according to the New York Times, article written by Andrew Kramer. Ukraine indicts officials linked to efforts to investigate the Bidens. 3 officials were accused of operating at the behest of Russian intelligence when they aligned with efforts by Rudolph W. Giuliani to tie the Biden family to corruption in Ukraine. Ukrainian police and prosecutor accused 2 politicians and a former prosecutor of treason, saying they colluded with Russian intelligence agency in aiding an effort by Rudy Giuliani several years ago to tie the Biden family to corruption in Ukraine. Those accused include Konstantin Kulik, a former Ukrainian deputy prosecutor general who had drafted a memo in 2019 suggesting Ukraine investigate Hunter Biden, President Biden's son, for his role in serving on the board of a Ukrainian energy company, which is not even illegal. I'm not sure why they would think it was. Also implicated were a current member of Ukraine's parliament, Oleksandr Dubinsky, and former member Andrei Dikach, who had publicly advocated for an investigation in Ukraine into Hunter Biden. They had also promoted spurious theory that it was Ukraine, not Russia, that had meddled in the 2016 presidential election in the United States. The 3 were indicted on charges of treason and belonged to a criminal organization. The charges refer to information subversive activities and focus on the actions in 2019 before the American presidential election. They do not say if or when the activity stopped. In the run-up to the 2020 election in the United States, Mr. Giuliani and later former President-defendant J. Trump had encouraged Ukrainian officials to follow up on the allegations against Hunter Biden. The effort included a phone call by Trump to President Vladimir Zelensky in July 2019, urging the investigation into the Bidens at a time when the Trump administration was withholding military aid for the Ukrainian army. Critics say the pressure to investigate the Bidens was politically motivated. Dude, he was impeached for it. Critics say. Come on, man. Here's the New York Times with their frickin' both-siderism sneaking into the article. Critics say the pressure to investigate the Bidens was politically motivated. Dude, he was impeached for it. It wasn't just critics say. You know? Mr. Trump and Giuliani denied that there was anything appropriate about the contact, which, of course, there was totally inappropriate. The events that led to Mr. Trump's first impeachment in the House of Representatives was acquitted in the Senate. Ukrainian media on Tuesday suggested the indictments too had a political component for Mr. Zelensky, that they were intended to send a signal for Mr. Biden now, as his administration is pressing Congress for military assistance to Ukraine, that Kiev will root out accused Russian agents, including those who had promoted accusations against his family. Or it could be that they're just traitors and they're being arrested for working with the enemy. How about that? I like how New York Times tries to both sider this. Well, it's obvious that they were just doing this to curry favor for... New York Times probably just shut operations right now. You know, some of these reporters are just complete idiots. Your story.
They're just trying to be unbiased by showing both sides.
Both siderism where it don't exist.
Okay.
Seriously.
In culture news, speaking of being canceled, Weiwei exhibition is canceled before it even opens. This is from David Morquand on Euronews Culture. Chinese dissident and artist Ai Weiwei has said his new exhibition at the Listen Gallery in London has been cancelled after he posted comments on social media referencing the Israel-Hamas war. It's not censorship if it's censorship. The Listen Gallery in London has cancelled their plans to mount an Ai Weiwei show. This dude's a Chinese dissident, by the way. Oh, he said something we don't agree with. He's a dissident. What do you think he's gonna do? Just, oh, now that I'm free from China, I'm never gonna speak again. I'm gonna just be quiet.
We must suppress you.
Yeah. After a social media post by the artist about the Israel-Hamas war, the show was expected to open on Wednesday, or I guess yesterday. The Chinese contemporary artist is well known for his political commentary and activism on human rights issues. So why is London surprised that he said anything on social media? Because they're idiots. I don't know. He has been vocal in his support for the Palestinians. In a since-deleted tweet, I reportedly wrote, "The sense of guilt around the persecution of the Jewish people has been at times transferred to offset the Arab world. Financially, culturally, and in terms of media influence, the Jewish community has had a significant presence in the United States." The tweet continued, "The annual $3 billion aid package to Israel has, for decades, been touted as one of the most valuable investments the United States has ever made. This partnership is often described as one of shared destiny." In the wake of the tweet, a Listen representative said exhibition would not go on as planned. You said the word Jewish in the sentence, hence you're anti-Semitic. That's what's happening right now, by the way, on social media. If you say anything about Jewish people, if you're like, I love Jewish people, you're anti-Semitic. It doesn't matter what you say. You can't say Jewish people now. You can't generalize Jewish people. You will get canceled for being anti-Semitic. The tweet continued, in the wake of the tweet, Listen representative said the exhibition would not go as planned. After extensive conversations with Ai Weiwei, following a comment he posted online, we together agreed that now is not the right time to present his new body of work, a gallery statement reads. Is his gallery about how Israel should die or something? Like, I doubt it. I think he's just a realism artist, so he just makes anti-Chinese corruption probably art, and I don't know what that has to do with how it's not good for right now with the current climate. Just bullshit. It's just bullshit written down. We don't like him anymore. The dissident pissed us off. In my opinion, all kinds... Oh wait, sorry. Where was I? Okay, here it goes. There's no place for debate that can be characterized as anti-Semitic. Like I said, you say Jewish people, you're anti-Semitic or Islamophobic at a time when all efforts should be on ending the tragic suffering in Israel and Palestinian territories, as well as in communities internationally. Ai Weiwei is well known for his support of freedom of expression and for championing the oppressed, and we deeply respect and value our long-standing relationship with him. And that's why we're canceling his gallery. Hello? In a statement of his own, I said the show had been effectively cancelled by the gallery. In my opinion, all kinds of opinions can be expressed, even when they are not correct, he wrote. Incorrect opinions should be especially encouraged. If free expression is limited to the same kind of opinions, it becomes an imprisonment of expression. Freedom of speech is about different voices different from ours. Simply put, we have never lived in a society with freedom of expression, but rather in a society where speech is not cherished and an individual speech is not deemed important or acceptable by controllers of the speech. He continued, the cancellation of an exhibition is not important at all because thousands and tens of thousands of exhibitions are still going on. Whether I exist or not is also not important because there would also be someone who wants to look for light and the joy that light brings to life, as people do not like darkness. I previously addressed the conflict in his 2017 documentary, Human Flow, about the global refugee crisis, which featured footage shots in Gaza. A representative for the artist said a further 3 exhibitions in New York, Paris, and Berlin had also been called off. They're just like, oh, this guy is toxic. Let's stay away from him. Oh, drop him. He's hot. He's hot. So, yet again, the started music balance accident. Yet again, the artist industry is all about freedom of expression as long as you express what I want you to express. After that, shut the hell up. Your day in history, I guess.
Yeah. There's a intolerance in the people that pretend to practice tolerance. Isn't that weird?
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a discussion, not even an argument. Never even got to the argument stage because I asked a simple question: aren't all people in that region Semitic? Right?
Yeah.
So if I'm anti-Palestinian, can I also be anti-Semitic? Instead of answering my question, I got accused of being anti-Semitic for asking the question. No, honestly, if I look at Semitic, it says Arabic-speaking people are Semitic. So if I'm Palestinian, how can I be anti-Semitic if I'm Semitic? And oh, you're a racist for asking that question. No, I'm not.
It's the Red Scare all over again. You have leftist ideology. You must be a communist. Dirty commie. Yeah. You know? Shut up.
Questioning You're questioning Israel's motives. Oh, you must be anti-Semitic. No, honestly, I have no idea why they're trying. I'm in Joe Biden's side of this, by the way. He says this is a perfect opportunity to discuss a two-state solution, which Israel has never wanted to do. They want to suppress, at least Netanyahu does, wants to suppress these people like the apartheid in South Africa. That's what he wants.
I also want to mention a very interesting story that I saw, which is what's happening in Israel right now is a great example of why ethno-states are bad. Because what are ethno-states based off of? You belong here and you don't belong here. And who makes those rules? Whoever's sitting on the big chair makes the rule of who belongs where and who gets to go somewhere. And funnily enough, people always say, so a lot of Jewish people died during the Holocaust. Okay? A lot. 6 million, I think. Also, a lot of Roma died, or as some people call them, gypsies, which they don't like being called. A lot of Roma died. They actually offered Roma people their own ethno-state after the Holocaust, saying, okay, we gave one to the Jewish people, you also get one. And they said, no, that goes against our entire identity, which is traveling around and being nomads. Why the hell would we want a little slice of the earth that only we're allowed to be in? In a way, having an ethno-state is just putting yourself in a box and instead of having the freedom to go wherever you want, you're Jewish, go to Israel, what are you doing here? That's all that causes. It actually caused more conflict in the world than causing less conflict, I argue.
And the Ottoman Empire did the same with the Bedouins, who are also drifters. You know, they're Bedouins. They don't stay in one place. Anyway.
People, the world order or whatever does not like nomadic people. They like people that they can control.
We want borders.
Yeah, they want borders. They want, this is my slice of the pie. You can't go here.
We want borders. We want economies we can define. We want this. We want that. We want goods to market. It's all for rich people to make money.
How am I supposed to know how much money I'm making off the Roma if they're not all in one place?
Exactly. And how can we quantify their labor into some kind of
number
device to make our economy move? What's their labor? They sell stuff. No. They dance, they sing, shit like that. Okay.
They dance, they sing.
Bad news. We cannot do this day in history because I did it yesterday. So instead, we're going to do yesterday's.
Okay.
This day in history, November 15th. So we're going to go back in time an extra day. In 1315, on not this day, the Swiss Confederation achieved the first great military success against the Australian Habsburgs at the Battle of Mortgarten. In 1630, Johannes Kepler, the German astronomer who discovered 3 major laws of planetary motion, died in Reisenberg, Germany. 1818, the Congress of Aix-la-Chapelle, not Dave Chappelle, the first of 4 congresses held by Great Britain, Austria, Prussia, and Russia and France following the Napoleonic Wars, concluded. 1848, Pellegrino Rossi, a former member of the Carboniera, was assassinated in Rome during the revolutions of 1848, aptly named because that's when they took place. 1864, Union General William Tecumseh Sherman began his march to the sea from Atlanta to Savannah, Georgia, laying waste with the economic resources of the state as he sought to crush white Southern civilian support for the Confederate cause. His campaign helped end the American Civil War. That's why there's no Fort Sherman in Georgia. 1884, the Berlin West Africa Conference opened, in which the major European nations met to decide all questions connected with the Congo River Basin in Central Africa. 1885, we're plodding along 1 year at a time here. St. Joseph's Mukasa, one of the martyrs of Uganda, was beheaded by order of Mwanga, the Kabaka ruler of the Kabaka, which is the word for ruler of Uganda. 1889, Emperor Pedro II of Brazil was forced to abdicate by a group of military officers led by Manuel Deodoro de Fonseca. 1891, German Field Marshal Edwin Rommel was born. He was a famous, probably the best German general in World War II, who was famously attempted to assassinate Hitler and was executed. Or he might actually give him the choice to shoot himself. 1891, W. Averill Harriman, statesman and leading U.S. diplomat in relations to the Soviet Union during World War II and Cold War, was born. 1904, American inventor King Camp Gillette was granted a U.S. patent for the first razor with disposable blades. Gillette. 1938, a farewell parade was held in Barcelona, Spain for volunteers and international brigades who had fought for the Republicans during the Spanish Civil War. 1959, the Clutter family was discovered murdered on their Kansas farm, and their deaths, as well as the capture, conviction, and execution of two drifters inspired Truman Capote's classic nonfiction novel, In Cold Blood. 1978, American anthropologist Margaret Mead, whose great fame owed much to the force of her personality and outspokenness as it did to the quality of her scientific work. She dies at the age of 76. 2001, not on this day, but on November 15th, Microsoft released Xbox, a video game console system. In 2011, Duke University basketball coach Mike Krzyzewski, or however you pronounce it, recorded his Coach K. Recorded his 903rd career win, surpassing Bob Knight, who died a couple weeks ago, to become the winningest coach in NCAA Division I men's history. Actually, he was an assistant for Bob Knight when he was at Army. I know that from my memory. Featured event on this day, 1988, Palestinian statehood proclaimed by Yasser Arafat. Well, that didn't last. A meeting in Algiers, Palestinian National Council, urging a PLO chairman, Yasser Arafat, issued a declaration of independence for the state of Palestine, the West Bank, and Gaza Strip on this day in 1988. Famous biography born today, Georgia O'Keeffe, American painter, was born on this day, on November 15th, 1887 in Sun Prairie, Wisconsin. We know where that is. It's north of Madison. She died on March 6, 1986 in Santa Fe, New Mexico. We also know where that is. And other famous birthdays today. Curtis LeMay, United States General, was born this day in 1906. 1907, Klaus Graf Schenk von Stauffenberg, a German military officer, was born in 1907, yes. Ed Asner, American actor, was born in 1929. And J.G. Ballard, a British author, was born in 1930. And what day is it? It is National, besides being Great American Smokeout, which is the day where everybody stops smoking tobacco. Or whatever you smoke, I guess. National Fast Food Day, so you can binge on fast food while you're skipping them butts. And it's National Button Day. After you're skipping those butts, you can sew a button. American Smokeout, we already covered that. Mad Tie One On for Safety holiday campaign. It's Mothers Against Drunk Driving. Tie one on for safety. So I guess not sure what we're tying one on for. Maybe a ribbon? I don't know. It's National Indiana Day. National Rural Health Day. International Day for Tolerance. Oh yeah, when you're giving up smoking, good day to practice tolerance. I want to kill somebody. I need a cigarette. Ever been around a smoker or anybody addicted to tobacco? They're basically worse than heroin addicts. They are. They just lose their fuck. Seriously, they're angry. They hate you. They hate everybody. International Check Your Wipers Day. Well, while you're not smoking, check your wipers. Especially since they're going to start freezing to your windshield soon. World Pancreatic Cancer Day, third Thursday in November, and that's it. So that's a pretty awful thing to celebrate. Cancer, but hey, cancer is living too. Cancer is people too. No, we're celebrating the people who survived it, people who have it, people who are going through it, families of people who are going through it. Pancreatic cancer has got to be awful. Can't live without a pancreas. That's it. That's all. And I don't know if you got my my video of what's his ass there. I can't hear you.
I did get it and it's ready, but first, this has been Allison here from the Netherlands, and we are going to see you tomorrow for the end of the week and whatever is happening there.
Roger, United States, gonna stop smoking today. There, I did it. Back to you.
And this is your... Oh, I forgot what it's called just now.
A mic drop. Our daily
Your
mic
mic drop. This is your mic drop. It's literally the name of the video. This is your
mic drop moment.
Mic drop.
This type of pettiness is beneath the process of electing a president. Yeah. And as people watch today, if your arguments are so strong, if your arguments are so great, and mine are so bad, then just keep quiet. Let me make my awful arguments, and then you can just reject them out of hand. But the problem is you fear the truth. The problem is you want to shout down any voice that says anything different than what you want to hear. And you can continue to do it, and believe me, it doesn't bother me one bit.
Be sure to hit the like, subscribe, and notify buttons, and follow our other channels, Toxic Alley, History of Gravy, and Scratchy Old Records.